Hi everyone, I'll be reporting about critic of Sachs and the critic of modernization. So I will first be discussing the critic of Sachs, its objectives, to understand Sachs' disagreements in his arguments, to analyze how foreign assistance is not the key to ending poverty, to fully grasp and comprehend the ethical ideas of Sachs' arguments. So, who is Jeffrey Sachs? Jeffrey David Sachs is born on November 5, 1954, is an American economist, academic, public policy analyst, and former director of Earth's Institute at Columbia University, where he holds the title of university professor. He is also known as one of the world's leading experts on sustainable development, economic development, and the fight against poverty. So Jeffrey Sachs has been advocating to end poverty around the world. So in his book, The End of Poverty, there are two main points in the critic of disagreement concerning Sachs' arguments. And the first one is in the economics, and the second one is the ethics. So we'll be discussing now the economics. In the critic, it is doubtful that the foreign assistance can ever end poverty. Why guys? Ano man? Foreign assistant. Because nang-argue si Sachs sa iyang book na all the rich people must gather, rich people and rich state must gather their money, extra money or mga excess baggage nila nga kwarta for helping third world states, poor countries. And why the critic thinks that it is doubtful foreign assistance can ever end poverty. Because daghan kaayo og requirements para imo nang mabuo ang ingana na way nga ang mga dato magbayad, rich states magbayad sa mga problema sa isa ka state, di ba? Pero he argue na ang money is used as a ladder of development. Kailangan lang ipastep ang isa ka poor state sa ladder then magtuloy-tuloy na siya saka mo na iyang gi-argue. But the confusing part is sa ang critic na confused sa argue ni Sachs. Kay ang isa sa main reason nga no tabangan sila is not by giving them money but opening the third world states, opening themselves in a neoliberalism way, capitalism. So dapat i-open nila ilang market sa mga private investor or foreign investor. So, ang ilahang foreign assistance is disguised. Di ba? I-disguise siya as foreign assistance. Pero kuan di siya foreign investors. So, mga rich gyapon, natural ang maka-invest gyapon sa isa ka poor country is ang katong mga rich na state and rich nga mga personalities around the world. So, at the end of the day, mura confusing kay siya, di ba? Okay, from the first place, I thought makakuan siya step sa ladder. Although, kuan yun ang economy mag-run. Pero, ang the people living in that state is kay na mahimo siya worker, manufacturers. Limited lang yapon ang asenso, GDP. Ang GDP mo increase. Pero at the same time, ang people nag-serve as workers sa mga foreign investors, di ba? So, dili sila ang owner yun, dili ang citizen ang main owner sa mga investment, sa mga establishment. So doubtful gid siya. Sachs tends to rely on a kind of environmental determinism. Ang isa ka problem ni Sachs. Because the reason para sa iyaha nga pobre ang other states or non-Western states is most of the non-Western state is that sa ilang environment, di ba? Environment. When we say environmental determinism, I will discuss it further later. But ang short review lang is ga-base lang ta sa atong surrounding. Ang isa ka society or civilization ang siyang surrounding kung unsa ray naa mahatag mao nang reason nga no maora pod iyang development throughout time. So nagbiliw si Sachs limited man ang resources and sa mga third world knowledge and science and ilaha pong education, mo dang reason poor states. And the reason why rich states ang Western civilization because sa ilang history, wars, spatial diffusion, we will discuss it later. And it has been discussed by other reporters, di ba? Pero hatagan niya po na overview ana sa akong point of view. That is why na-reach sila throughout history, given ang technology na combine ana. Sa tuwa, he believes that the reason why is that we live in a tropical country, less adversities, so less invention, less education, less tanen. So mali na, di ba? Kay murag yung gidegrade ang isa ka poor state. Actually, we are very rich. So ang third is the rich to help poor comes with a hefty price label attached. Most immediately, that price is to cease criticizing the sources of wealth in the present system of global corporate capitalism. Yes, isa sa pinakakuan ni Sack is mo siya nga-support sa mga rich bitaw mag-invest sa poor country states. Na dili na ka mag-ask, na rich sila. Murag wala ni mo gihatag opportunity ang educate ang isa ka state. Imuha lang hatagan silang aid ana tabangan ta mo. So, murag ra man siya ga-support sa mga rich bitaw. Wala niya gi hunahuna ang kanang poor nga state na unsa na sila. Fourth, that poverty results not from income transfer from poor to rich, but entirely from different national rates of economic growth, is historically shallow in a convenient way. So sa iya wala siya nag-believe anang monopoly sa mga rich people nga tungod sa transfer of money, poor to rich, wala siya nagtuwa na. It is because economic growth sa isa ka state unsa ilahang nasing again it focus on environmental determinism kung unsa ray naa ma-produce sa isa ka state within its surroundings sa area. So mo nang reason argument, di ba shallow kaayo ngano magkuan sila ana, ngano focus si Sachs ana sa economic growth. Wala niya na-realize ngano na poor gud ang isa ka state, di ba? And the fifth, lack of criticism of the present hegemonic policy regime, the neoliberalism that has done us so well for the rich, so for the super rich. Again, ang isa ka reason ka Sack is ang iyang siyang book, The End of Poverty, is murag gahatag ng more opportunity sa mga dato instead sa poor. Yang ladder of development is kinda disguised na siya as kuan mo siya patago niya ba nga gipalabas na iyan na kuan siya ladder of development, but mo siya ways sa mga rich state to economically conquer ang isa ka poor state. Sila mag-invest dito, ilang mga establishment. Sachs tends to rely on, again, sorry, na-author na ako, wrong na. To earn aid, supplicant countries have to restructure their economies neoliberally. So that is why, muna akong ginaingon sa inyo nga, kung gusto ka maka-aid yun, kailangan mo i-open imong market. I-open ang market sa isa ka certain state for foreign investor. So silbi, instead ang mga citizen ang maka-benefit, murag ang gaon sa kana ang mga establishment is still foreign people, white people, majority ana. So at the end of the day, ang mas modato is still the western civilization. Gihimo lang nilang market again. Ang kwan, so murag mo siya transfer from poor to rich. Murag ilar gyapon gipangwartaan ang mga tao sa isa ka third world states, di ba? Mo nang nahitabo sa Nike karon. Ang Nike gatukod sa Indonesia, Vietnam. That is usually why yung mga branded products abi natug sa US, pero US based brands na sila ha. Pero ang reason why ngano made in Vietnam because of the lower wages. Nag-open ng Vietnam, gi-allow nila na trabaho ang workers, di ba? Pero ang poverty rate nila taas gyapon, wala nang bag-o. That is why irrelevant ning solution ni Sachs, confusing. Instead sa ga-focus siya sa end of poverty, murag i-continue lang niya nga poverty lang gyapon. Murag pobre ra gyapon sila nga state ba. Pero nalay murag job opportunities. Murag yatagan lang niya ingana bitaw. Sunod. So I'll be explaining neoliberalism. I know it has been discussed, so I want to give overview again para di malibog. Neoliberalism is a policy model that encompasses both politics and economics and seeks to transfer the control of economic factors from the public sector to private sector. So, maring nahitabo karon, di ba? In this modern world, neoliberalism ang gita, capitalism. So, ang public sector is just a guide to private sector. Sila na yung mag-guide bitaw sa welfare sa isa ka state. Pero usually, ang private sector na run mostly sa economic system. So, kato ka Sachs, gi-argue giniya nga kailangan gid ang rich para sila ang bridge or ladder for development, magsunod-sunod ayan. Pero iyang argument na nga na is confusing kay nag-benefit riyapon siya sa rich, di ba? Kato na mga workers, example lang sa Vietnam, ang Nike brands is made in Vietnam, Indonesia, because mas lower wages dadto, mas less ang bayad sa tao, mas less ang raw materials, I mean less ang value sa raw materials. So, dito sila mag-develop, dito sila mag-manufacture. Maraya po nang gakahitabo if i-open na to atong market sa kwan. Instead ato ang mga citizen ang mga maka-open ng establishment, ma-outnumbered siya and ma-outpowered siya sa foreign investors. So problematic na pud kayo na siya. Silbi muratag mga workers ra nila dito. Sila ga benefit sa products. Second is environmental determinism. Atangan tamong overview ani gyapon kay it has been discussed, so gusto na ko i-refresh na pod mo otro para makasabot ta. Environmental determinism is the belief that physical features of an environment determines the patterns of human culture and societal development. So, again, manang reason lagi daw nga porta kay Sachs is ang atong environment is less adversity, less ang gamay ra problema ba, we have all the resources nga na mo nang less atong development kay naman sa total, unlike in the western na snow there weathers nga ma-force sila create og mga new invention. So isa na sa reason argue ni Sachs. Ang ethical na pod sa iyang argument is money ethic niya. Wait. We are told that the rich countries should invest poor countries for the sake of their own security, to prevent failed state, to prevent the poor from becoming terrorists. Grabe ka ko ani Sachs sa poor state. Ubos kay ang pananaw. Mura siya nag-ingon nga murag sa iyaw hopeless. It is hopeless na ang isa ka poor state. So kung di nimo siya tabangan, mahimo siya nimong enemy later, become a terrorist. So maproblema imong isa ka state, himo makontra nimo siya, so kailangan nimo siya tabangan. Actually, it is a generalization ni Sachs. Not all non-western state na poor is becoming a terrorist, di ba? Grabe ka tawa na white-minded, I call them. It's not racism, but that inana gid usually mag-think ang white people terrorists ang dili ilang kwan. Ina sila ka self-centered, di ba? So a moral pragmatism of fear, do it to save ourselves, di ba? Nga na kuan ni Sachs murag tag-dismiss na niya ang opportunity of development or modernization sa isa ka state without any foreign help. Without any foreign help, wala ni chance. Nga na iyang pasabot. Blaming nature leaves little bit pity as the basis for morality. So, you cannot blame nature actually. Murag kuan mo. Example, Dubai. They are rich, but they are still terrorists, di ba? You cannot, wala sila mga tree, pero isa rin lang environmental resources. Dubai was a sand before. Sand rin na siya, wala siya cities before. But later on, it was discovered na may oil, nag-create yung economic boom. And still, Americans wants to control the oil before. That's why naay mga terrorists. Sila gyapon ang reason ngano naay mga terrorists ang mga Americans gyapon, western states. And western state gusto nila i-control ang power dira, ang money, ang monopoly sa oil. So that is why mag-create sila war, hantod ng kailangan tabang, Hantod ang ilahang aid, foreign aid will become in exchange is sila ang mag-control sa oil, di ba? Grabe ka kuha ng mga western states. So isa na sa problem nila. So insufficient ihang argument ni nga na ngano magkuhan siya sa terrorism. The more to disguise its origin in class exploitation. Tag-exploit yun nila ang other states. But now, the eastern states na kuan pareha sa Middle East, UAE, they are becoming more powerful than other states actually because of the oil. So kita isa ta sa mga na-exploited yun sa mga kuan. Kita ang mga disruptive civilization Asia. Ilang gi-disrupt ato ang culture mga Asians na bag-o gi-mix nila sa ila. So actually we're kind of lost ta nga we cannot really ang kita mga citizen is we do not know who we really are. Nawala atong alibata, daghan kayo major factors. Back again, the two deficient ideologies combine to disguise the real culprit behind global poverty, the Western imperialist expansion that ruined the civilization are already existing. So kung imo yung i-analyze, isa sa main reason ngano na disrupted ngano na poor states. Long before walay poor states, Philippines was never considered poor, di ba? But the Western state conquered Philippines, then they called it poor, di ba? Ang mga ASEAN countries is mostly conquered man sila sa mga Western state or mga white people. Kita na-disrupt atong culture, atong development on our own. It doesn't mean nga kung wala sila, di ta mo develop on our own, di ba? We can develop our own ways, not in Western way. Galing lang, wala, naputol siya. Kay tungod nila ragyapon. Isa la ragyapon yung naghimo sa tuwa o kuan. Isa sila sa major culprit. Ano na himo tang poor karon ila tang gi-exploit, gigamit nila tong lands as kuan mga raw materials kuanan nila. So isa na sa argument. So conclusion, Sachs, the critic of Sachs focuses on two main arguments which are economics and the ethics of his theory. Sachs argues in his economic point of view that one of the finest way to eliminate poverty in third world states is through the aid of the rich states. We all know that rich people and rich states have plenty of cash to put in. And by combining those, it can really change the tides of a poor country. His ladder of development has plenty of requirements that comes with a hefty price by opening its market to foreign competition. Sachs' foreign competition can also be disguised as foreign aid, in which his ladder only benefit the Western state. Relying on foreign aid will only lead to more reliance from the fact that a poor country will not be self-sustaining from the very beginning of its growth. Sachs' ethic in his theory is quite disturbing by convincing the rich to invest or help the poor states because of the dire consequences that a poor state might become a terrorist if the rich did not interfere of its growth. Sachs is already dismissing the chance of a poor state to grow without any foreign aid. The real question of Sachs' ladder of development is that are the poor states really poor from the beginning, and what causes its poverty? Because at the end of the day, the Western imperialist expansion made other countries become poor by disrupting its already established civilization and by forcing them to adopt Western culture. So, never forget guys na ang foreign aid is quite difficult siya to understood nga makatabang siya sa poverty. Because from the very beginning, ang imuhang growth is through reliance sa foreign people, not by finding the power of a certain state. Aha imong strength, aha ka mo mas mudako imong economy. Ano mo isbal wala nimo gihatagan niya na ang isa ka state, but imo siya iparely sa foreign investors, di ba? Grabe ka kuan si Sachs gyapon. Confusing kay ang kuan sa pag-end sa poverty kay it will only benefit sa western states gyapon. And ang katupon sa iyang ethical sa ethics niya nga mahimo ang poor states into terrorists is grabe ka demoralizing sa tuwa. Ano nalibasin nalimtan niya nga sila ang nag-disrupt sa tong culture. Ang mga white civilization ang naghilabot sa tuwa mga non-western cultures manang disrupted ta. So I hope nakasabot mo sa critic of sex, guys. I'll be now discussing the critic of modernization. Objectives to analyze how European civilization became the key to modern development, to understand why European imperialism is considered as the white man's burden, to know the importance of spatial diffusion in modernization. So, critic of modernization. Structural functionalism and modernization are components of a modern scientific project that involve most of the conventional social science sociology, economics, political science, and geography. Structural functionalism. School of thought according to which each of the institution, relationship, roles, and norms that are together constitute a society serves a purpose in each is indispensable for the continued existence of other and of society as a whole. So, structural functionalism isa ni siya sa theory sa sa critical ay sa modernization na ang mura siya domino effect ba sa western civilization. Ang western civilization according historically sila gid written sa atong historical books na sila gid ang isa sa nag-pave way sa tuwa sa modernization, di ba? So, structural functionalism, it's their main purpose gid sa society to grow. Murag tagkuan sa ila ba? Tag-embody sa ila na nga label na sila ang key sa modernization. Sila ang naghatag sa domino effect na pag down nila ay pag start nila na nagsunod-sunod na dayon sila ang way. So modernization, what is modernization? The act or process of making or becoming up to date or state of being up to date or modern. Modernization theory saw ladders and stages of development leading from uniform traditionalism up toward a singular common future. So, mana. So, in this one, structural functionalism, for example lang, they believe that if we go back time lugar, example, if i-disrupt na to ang Western civilization, so, na possibility daw nga ma-end ang modernization, dili mahitabo. So, will becoming outdated gyapon, same as usual. So, kailangan siya may ana. Muna lang ito, murag centered ang isa ka kana a certain na civilization is driven gid siya na mag-create sa modernization, sa development, sa para sa whole world, di ba? Continued existence of the others and society as a whole. So sila ang magpatuloy, sila ang reason nga na magpatuloy, sila ang nag-pave way. So in the critic, the environmental determinism of the late 19th century argued that the Europeans were innately superior to people from elsewhere because their natural environment made them that way. This was at least an advance on earlier notion that God intended people to have excuse me, innate characteristic. So, may lang kwan sa sa Western civilization na driven sila og sense of purpose nga ilahag yung ang Western nations, yung Western countries are the key yun sa because of their environmental natural environment, So again, na-discuss na ako ng environmental determinism kung unsa ang surroundings. So unsa man gid ang reason In my own opinion gid guys, ang Western civilization gid is complex kay siya, di ba? Kay daghan kaayo school of thought dadto nag-start ang kwan. Pero wala na to, gi-undermine sa modernization ang non-Western states. Wala niya ginawa na unsa ang nasa scriptures na to before. What if they are more far advanced, di ba? What if naguba ang ilang history? Daghan kay factors nga kuan dili ra kay ang Western civilization. Isa sila sa nagpipwi, but they are not the key in my opinion and in the critic. Notion then served to legitimate European imperialism as bringing European civilization to the world, for that was the white man's burden. White man's burden again. So, unsa man yung white man's burden? Muna ilang gitawag nga, kailangan nila spread ang civilization nila para ma-advance ang isa ka certain states, matabangan sila, nya mahimo sila same sa kwan. So, isa ni sa ka main reason pod ano ang other non-Western state is disrupted, di ba? Nawala gyapon ilahang goal as a country, as a nation, kay giguba nila ilang culture, giguba sa mga Western civilization ang culture sa mga non-Western, ilang gibag-o, ilang kuan ang way of thinking sa mga people dadto, mga citizen. So nalahi, so ang outcome na noon nalahi sila instead sa ilang natural outcome. Same as sa Western. If na nag-conquer sa Western civilization, mabag-o gyapon outcome. If dili ra sila gatuyok sa dili sila war na ilahi, like kita pod nga kan. So na possibility malahi ilang outcome na to ipa-embrace. Imagine ang Japan, dugay ang China. Third world sila pero they are still considered third world because dili man sila Western, di ba? Di sila Pero when you think of Japan and China, they are rich countries. They can compete with the Western countries. Why? Sila ang mga country nga malabo gid na conquered in the ancient time. Wala na stick gid nila ang culture, ilang tradition, wala sila nangahilabtan. China has been locked down except sa Hong Kong, di ba? Ang Hong Kong, Macau, mura nang na-conquer sa mga Western civilization, but the rest, Chinese people, they are all the same, they think the same as Chinese. They have their own culture, nag-develop ilang economy, nagtaas ilang economy on their own, but never on mixing and adopting culture at that time. Sa una wala sila, especially ang Japan, ilagi nang gi-close ilang borders tanan before na history at that ancient time yapon. So, let's go back. Isa na sa reason sa argument sa critic of modernization na dili gid ang Western civilization ang main Isa siya sa undermine niya ang other cultures. This formed the naturalistic basis of modernization, the notion that there was a single universal process of the evolution of civilization, with Euro-America occupying eventually position toward which all societies tend. So naalagi universal. So sila ra gyud ang way of kanang But actually guys, even the with or without them mag-develop man gid ta, di ba? Ngali lang disrupted ta, isa ta sa mga victim nila. So spatial diffusion of innovation. So what is spatial diffusion? Is the process by which an idea or innovation is transmitted between individuals and group across space. So sa critic, sa modernization yun na theory is nag-argue sila nga tungod sa spatial diffusion sa Western civilization, maunang na ang spatial diffusion and environmental determinism is integral na sila ha. Ang environmental determinism ang reason nga nagka-create og spatial diffusion. Why? I'm gonna explain it to you. Ang reason is, example ang Western civilization, sila mag-heart ani nga topic. Ang Western civilization, it has pila siya ka season. Na sila winter, fall, summer, kalimot ko. Rainy season, di ba? Nasa rainy nga pa. Rain season. So, kana sila na ang kada culture dito lain states sa within Western civilization is lahi sila, ga-prepare sila na ang sa theory is that tungod silang environment na driven sila to think in a creative way, nag-think sila faster, nag-create sila invention na ma-accommodate sa commodity sa population, cure tungod sa sakit, sa cold weather, daga na-create nga mga sakit, diseases, wars. Isa na siya mo nang reason sa spatial diffusion. Ngano ni sulod ang spatial diffusion? Because of those adversities, naka-create siya each state na iyang invention, iyang fixing way silang problem sa ilang environment, sa ilang way of living. So na-adapt siya sa lain culture, and pag-adapt sa lain western states sa Japon, na combine na idea na improve hantod na kwan mo na nang nagka-develop ang ilahang silbi, ilahang western culture nang mas ni advance sila ba tungod kay combine man with ideas, science, medicine, technology, cuisine. Mo nang isa sa ilang kwan sa spatial diffusion, nang reason nga for develop sila according sa book, that societies wishing to develop should open their borders and let change in, should become part of existing global capitalist system. So mo na ang hitabo sa una, nag-open borders sila, nagkuha ng trading. But still, karon na time, mo ilang gusto mo embrace ta sa capitalism. It's very hard manggod mangyana. Kita ma-considered nato nga wala man ta na develop, man ta na pareha sa special. So mo gyapon tilang argue ang environmental determinism sa tua nga we live in tropical countries na mas murag given na sa tua tanan, so less kaayo ang invention para kwan kay we only got 2 season, di ba, rainy and summer. So rainy season, so we what winter, di ta magkwan preserve, di ta magkwan sa tong clothing, murag mo na ilang gibases nga less developed ta. So ang ilang environment manggod naka-cause sa ilaha og trading, mas napaspas ang kwan economy nila, mas na kwan ilang invention, ilang education ug science na combine. Modernization can be countered only through alternatives that are more convincing and persuasive alternatives summed up from the perspective of excluded groups or ones based on criticism of the very concept of development. So, at the end of the day, sa historical records, Western civilization gyud ang major contributor, di ba, sa isa ka state. And sa atong world, sila ang major contributor gyud. So, in the critic, ra gyud nato ma-prove nga kanang dili nato kailangan ang Western civilization for modernization is with historical yapon alternative na persuasive siya enough na evidence nga maka-convince sa mga historian, credible siya enough nga makaingon nga kaya nato maimong ingani without Western culture, Western civilization, Western inventions. So that's all sa critical modernization. So conclusion, the Western culture had a major influence throughout the world, from history, tradition, cuisine, arts, invention, technology, and especially science. One cannot deny that the Western civilization became far more advanced due to its unique geographical characteristic, seeing as it developed early trading as well as a combination of invention by its neighboring state or known as spatial diffusion. Modernization was based too much on the example of European history and neglected the Third World, by disregarding the fact that Western civilization has exploited its natural resources and destroying its already established non-Western civilization. Given the fact that historical recordings still prove Western culture has a major role in modernization, it would take plenty of historical resources to counter this theory in order to verify that non-Western civilization states also contributed a lot in modernization. So, by the way guys, oo, sa critic sa sa modernization, yung critic is nag-focus ra gid siya sa nag-focus ra, di ba? Sa western states, wala day contribution, dili day mayana ang isa ka third world state sa ilang kuan. Pero in the recording gyud, dili gid mo argue nga sila gyud ang nag-pay way, as if, di ba? In the last part sa report na pwede nimo siya ma-counter na siya nga proof if you have the resources, historical resources as sa tuwa mga third world state na kaya gyapon nato yung but still limited man. So di gyapon nato ma-prove nga bisag wala sila, dili ta maingani gyapon ta. So di gyapon nato ma-prove. But never forget guys nga maingon ka nga rich state sila, ingana far more advanced sila. Isa sa reason is gi-exploit ta nila for pila ka years ang mga third world state. Actually, ang economy sa Europe before, sa ka-time nila Napoleon Bonaparte, they're declining na ilang economy ato. The reason why niadto sila sa lain mga third world state is to exploit resources para mabuhi ang ilang own kagalingon state. Hindi naman sila makasupply, di na nila ma-produce silang society. Mapudulong na unta to sila sa economic breakdown at that time. Mag-inflation anta sila. But nabuhi sila tungod sa mga third world state. So ilang gi-exploit ta nila gamit ang resources, taghimo tag slaves and etc. nga negative tanan ng effect, di ba? Na disrupt atong culture. Mo din to, as a result karon kita ang nag-suffer. At the same time, sila gibuild nila ilang kaugalingon, ilang own state na may ngana. So karon silbi kita gyapon apas sa ilaha, di ba? Isa yaman sa reason. So conclusion, chapter 4 as a whole na sa group namo, development as modernization. Chapter 4 conclusion. Development and modernization had been discussed throughout each topic of this chapter. We have understood the roots of our civilization and how it developed in this modern era. The chapter focuses on what really paved the way to our modern development. The theories have introduced us to the major contributors of this technological timeline. The Western civilization in these theories believed to have the main role on the dispersion of modern development around the world through spatial diffusion and environmental determinism, which is true based on the historical scriptures in the West. The critics in this chapter argued that the theories are too biased in Western culture and how development spread by disregarding non-Western civilization. Although most of the countries that are non-Western are apparently poor in this period of time in which we cannot see them as contributors in history to our modern development. We must also not forget that the poorer non-Western countries in this period are victims. They are exploited and conquered by the early Western civilization that led to its misperception of its own culture and by adapting and mixing its culture to the West. That is why there are limited historical resources that can considerably prove that non-Western culture is a major contributor in a modern development. So that's all guys, I hope you understand. So just PM me in Facebook if further question or mga topic nga wa na sabtan. Thank you, that's all.